Today we are going to start our first set of notes, which is 1.1 rational numbers. What I want you to see is at the beginning of each lesson, I am going to have vocab words. What color is that first word, integers? Red. So what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and take your red pen and you are going to write it in red. If it's not in red, you're just going to use your pencil. Okay, so that'll be for the case for all the notes. So I want you to go ahead and copy the slide down and then we'll talk about it here in just a minute. From the video that I just showed you, guys, what is an integer?
Positive and negative whole numbers.
Positive and negative whole numbers. So I have given you 5 examples here. -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. Can you guys think of any other positive or negative whole numbers? Anything else in the world?
5.
3, 5,
6.
6. Okay, those are all positive. What about negatives?
-7.
-7, -8. Okay, so anything that's a positive or a negative whole number, that's an integer. Now here's one that says 0 is neither positive or negative. Think about if you had money. If I went to the store and I'm like, man, I really want that. Would I say, I have -$0? No, would I say, I have positive $0? I would just say, I have no dollars. I have $0. Okay, so just remember 0 is not positive and it's not negative. Next up, we've got the next words. Repeat after me. Rational number. All right, a rational number by definition, and you should have written that in red in your notes, says a number that can be written in A over B form. Now that's kind of a tricky way of saying it can be written as a fraction. Because see, A over B is a fraction. So it can be written as a fraction, and B can not equal 0. So this, whenever it has an equal sign, but it has a slash through it, that just means it doesn't equal 0, okay? So for examples, it's an integer. Remind me again, guys, what is an integer? A positive or negative whole number, okay? So a rational number is, it can be an integer or it could be a terminating decimal. Does anyone know what the word terminating means? If your job was terminated, what does that mean? Cut off, taken away, it's done, okay? If you have terminated your job, you no longer have a job. So if you have a terminating decimal, that means a decimal that doesn't go on and on and on forever, 0.75. That's terminating. It ended, all right? What about this? Did this decimal end? No, what's that doing? It's repeating, okay? So a repeating decimal, it would not be this right here, but a terminating decimal, it's just simply a decimal that ends, okay? So those are 2 terms you might hear today during our lesson. Let's talk about absolute value. I want you to take out your red pen and go ahead and write this in your notes. Now, virtual students, if you are at home, I want you guys to print off your notes and go ahead and follow along with us too. The absolute value, that was also in that video that I just showed you. It's the distance between the number and the number 0 on a number line. This next part, I still want you using your red pen. The absolute value of a number is never what? Negative, okay? So you cannot have a negative absolute value. Let me show you how the absolute value of x is written. You've got your x, but for showing something as absolute value, you're simply just going to have a line in front and a line behind it. And this says the absolute value of x. All right, so this written right here, what do those lines in front and behind the number say? Absolute value. So this is asking me the absolute value of -3. Basically what I said, it's the distance between the number 0 and that number on a number line. So let's imagine I'm here at -3. If I were trying to get to 0, how many hops would it take me to get there? 3. So guess what? The absolute value is 3. In our class, whenever you have your final answer, you're going to simply put a box around it. All right, that helps me to see that you are done with that problem. Let's go on to the next one, 2. If it's here, remember I'm just trying to find the absolute value of 2. That's the distance between that number and 0. How many numbers away is it?
Negative.
It is 2 numbers away, okay? And if you remember, it cannot be negative, all right? So right here as it says, the absolute value of a number is never negative, all right? So the answer would be 2. How about the next one? -5. What's the absolute value of -5? 5. It just means it is 5 spaces away from the number 0. going to go ahead and go through some problems, and these problems are going to be similar to the way that you'll find it on your homework, on your quizzes, and on your test. So if my information right here, my instructions say, find the absolute value of something, that's exactly the same way the instructions are going to look on your quiz and your test coming up. Now, we will do quizzes on Mondays. I'm not going to give you one this next Monday, but the Monday after that, okay? So about a week and a half is when we'll have our first quiz, and it will be over the material that we're talking about today, all the way up until that time. So let's talk about the first one. Find the absolute value of -3. Who can help me with that? Miley, what is it?
3.
3 is correct, all right? So you're going to go ahead and write that and box it in. Next up, remind me again, guys, what does it mean or what does it say whenever I have lines in front of a number? What's that called?
Absolute value.
Absolute value, very good. AJ, what's the absolute value of 7?
7.
Very good. It's 7 places away from a 0. All right, next up, Rodney, what is the absolute value of 1 1/4? 1 1/4, very good. Okay, sometimes people are like, oh, do I need to change it to a decimal or an improper fraction? Nope. All you're going to do is you're going to take whatever inside of there and bring it out and basically get rid of those absolute value lines because it's 1 1/4 spaces away from a 0. Next up, Alexis, what's the absolute value of 5.3? Very good, 5.3. Next one, who wants to help me with this? All right, Miley, go ahead. What's the absolute value of -5/3?
5/3.
5/3 is correct. Very good. Okay, so we're basically bringing that number out and getting rid of the negative sign that is inside the absolute value. Hayden, what about the next one? The absolute value of -2.6. 2.6 is correct, and let's box it in. Do I have any questions for the first section of our notes today? All right, excellent. We're going to take it a next step. Number 2 asks us, copy and complete the statement using less than, greater than, or equal to. This is a tiny bit more difficult because I'm comparing two things. This right here, you'll see, that's a decimal. Is this a decimal?
No, it's a fraction.
Not right now, it's a fraction, okay? So we're gonna have to work through that. So this is taking it a little bit of a step further. Thomas, help me with the first one. Let's just focus on this part. What's the absolute value of -2.5? 2.5. Here's what you're going to do. Remember how I talked to you guys about always showing work? This is how you're going to show work for this kind of a problem. So whenever I'm doing something on my screen, you want to do the same thing on your notes. I'm going to drop down that blank. Now, I want this to be comparable. So since this is a fraction and that's a decimal, let's see if we can go ahead and change this into a decimal. Does anyone know what 3/2 would be as a decimal? Miley?
Oh, I was doing something.
Okay, that's all right. Do you know, Thomas?
0.1.
Not 1.1, it's close. Let me show you how you can find this out, okay? You're going to take your top number, which is 3, and then this fraction bar actually means divide. So we're going to do 3 divided by 2, all right? Put a 0.0, because I'm trying to turn it into a decimal. How many times can 2 go into a 3? 1 time. 1 times 2. How many times can 2 go into a 10? 5 times. So 5 times 2 is 10. And now I've reached my 0, which is when it makes me very happy because I can be done. So what is that decimal, guys? 1.5. All right, so we're going to do 1.5 right here. Now, Thomas, let's go back to you. Read this to me, but with a less than, greater than, or equal to sign.
2.5 is greater than 1.5.
You are correct, all right? And then I'm going to put it right up there in my original problem and put a box around it, okay? So the absolute value of -2.5 is greater than 3/2. Just remember, when you are doing your homework, I need to see this kind of work down here at the bottom that shows me you understand how to compare those two numbers, all right? Let's go on to the next one. Chloe, I've got a 9 here. Does it have any absolute value lines around it or a negative or anything? On that first one right there, that 9. No, so I don't have to do any work with that. I'm just going to drop it down, drop down my blank. Now, is there any work I can do here to find out what the absolute value of -9 is? Yes, what is the absolute value of -9? It is 9. Now go ahead and compare those two for me. Equal to, very good. And we're going to go ahead and put that right back up there in our original problem. 9 is equal to the absolute value of -9. Any questions on that one? Let's go on to the next one. We have not had something quite like this yet. Let's imagine, let me give you a scenario, that I have -$5. Am I allowed to just say, never mind, I don't want to have -$5 anymore. I just want to have $5. Can I do that? No, because negative $5 means I owe somebody $5, and I can't just say, never mind, I have $5. So here's the deal with this kind of a problem. Do you see this negative sign right there? It's not inside our absolute value lines, is it? No. So I have to keep the negative, and I'm just going to drop down that negative because it's outside of the absolute value. Now, Hope, what is the absolute value of 1/2? 1/2. Very good. So I'm dropping it down, making this now negative 1/2. I'm going to drop down my blank line. And Emma, what is the absolute value of 1/4? 1/4. Very good. Now there's something interesting. If this one right here doesn't have a sign in front of it, is it positive or negative? It's positive. There's an understood positive there. What numbers are bigger? Negative numbers or positive numbers? Positive is always bigger. So guys, read to me what this should say. Negative 1/2 is, okay, I'm hearing a lot of greater than. Is a negative number ever going to be bigger than a positive number? No, so it shouldn't be greater than. Now read it to me. What should it be? Negative 1/2 is less than 1/4. Okay, so now we're going to bring this up here and go ahead and box it in. Just remember, negative numbers are always smaller. A lot of you guys were focusing on the 1/2 and the 1/4, but the main thing you should really be focusing on there is a negative number will always be smaller than a positive number. Going on to the next one. Is there anything I can do with that 7? Nope, I'm just going to drop it down. Is there anything on the outside of my absolute value lines that I should drop down? What's out there?
Negative.
Let's drop down that negative. Now, Ariana, let's just focus on this. What's the absolute value of negative 4.5? Very good. So then I'm going to drop down 4.5. Remember what I just taught you. What's bigger, positive numbers or negative numbers? Positive. So let's read from left to right. What does it say? 7 is greater than negative 4.5. Excellent. Okay? So when you come to problems where it's asking you to compare things, remember the work you're going to show me is this step right here underneath the problem. All right, for the next thing, it's called modeling real life. For modeling real life, it's kind of like a story problem. That's just trying to bring this to life, like a real life scenario that might possibly happen. All right, so let's read this together. The summit elevation of a volcano is the elevation of the top of a volcano relative to sea level. Do you guys know what sea level is? It's just where the sea is, okay? So for me, sometimes it helps to visualize things by drawing pictures, especially with word problems. So let's just go ahead and draw here the sea. The next thing tells me the summit elevation of Kilauea, a volcano in Hawaii, is 1,277 meters. So what that's saying is this is a volcano that goes up above sea level, and you can tell that because it was positive, all right? So this point up here at the very top is 1,277 meters. And we'll go ahead and just name that. This is Kilauea. Now moving on, it says the summit elevation of a different volcano that is underwater called Loihi is negative 969 meters. Where would that be if it's negative meters?
969 or negative 969 meters below sea level.
It's going to be below the sea level, okay? So that means it's going down this way, all right? And it says that that summit peak is here. So we're going to go ahead and draw it. That's where the top of it is at. And this is negative 969 meters. And we'll label that, this one is Loihi. Now this has asked me 2 questions. First question, which summit is higher? Out of those, guys, which one is the tallest one? Good job trying to say it. That's tricky. I actually had to look up how to say this. So Kilauea is higher. So that's our first answer. We'll go ahead and write it down. Now you always got to look closely because here's a second question. Which summit is closer to sea level? So remember, we drew the sea. It's right here. Which summit or which peak? So we've got this peak right here, and we've got this peak right here. Which one is closer to that sea level, class? Is it Kilauea or is it Loihi? It's Loihi, all right? So let's write that answer down, and then we'll talk about that. All right, so Loihi is closer to sea level, and here's how you can tell. If you remember, this is 1,277 meters from that sea level. But this right here, if I took the absolute value of that, that is only 969 meters from there, which makes Loihi closer, even though it is below. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and box that in because that's our final answer. So remember, always box in that answer. It helps me just to be able to identify what final answer you're trying to give me as a teacher. The next section we have is a think, pair, share section. So I want you to, right now, with your partner, talk about question number 1 and see what the answer is to question number 1. All right, so the first one asks, which of the following numbers are integers? Girls, what did you guys get for your answer? 9, -1, and 15. Okay, so let's see one that you skipped. 3.2. Why is that not an integer?
Because it's not positive number. It's not a whole number.
It's not a whole number. Good job. So that's not one. And here's another one. What about this? -0.25. Why did you guys not say that?
It's not a whole number.
It's not a whole number because decimals are only part of a number. So excellent job, girls. Very good. Let's look at the next one. What is the absolute value of a number? So this is kind of like I'm looking for a definition on this one. All right, so for this one, something that would be super helpful is to go back to your notes. There's a definition that your teacher gave you at the beginning of class. And anytime you're doing homework assignments, please use your notes. This is something here to be a help to you. So looking at that, guys, what's the definition that I gave you about an integer?
It's never negative. It's always positive.
What do the words say right here in our notes? It's a
Positive and negative whole number.
positive and negative whole numbers. Let's write that down. All right, I cannot stress enough that when you are doing your homework, please, please, please use your notes that we took in class because my goal is to always teach you exactly what it is that you're going to need to know for your homework. I want you and your partner to look at number 3 and see if you can come up with that answer together. For this one, it says write a negative number whose absolute value is greater than 3. So she gave me -4. Let's see this. If I have the absolute value of -4, what would that be?
4.
4. Is that greater than 3? Excellent one. Okay, who's got another one? Thomas.
-5.
-5, because the absolute value of -5 would be 5, and that is greater than 3. Could I do this? The absolute value of -1.
No, because it's not.
No, what would that be?
1.
That would be 1. And is 1 greater than 3? No, so that would not be a good choice. Okay, so there's a lot of answers there. You go ahead and write down which one you chose. All right, the next one, number 4. Remember, this is going to be similar to problems that you would find on your homework. Compare the following values, 3.5 and the absolute value of -7/2. Remember, there's some work that I'm going to want to see on this, okay? So you're going to show me some work underneath. Do I need to do anything with that 3.5?
No.
Nope, let's just go ahead and drop it down. Lexi, what is the absolute value of -7/2? 3.5. Look at that. She did all that work. So she could have dropped it down as 7/2, which equals 3.5. Lexi, what would the answer in the middle be? Equal to is correct. You're going to drop that up in that very first thing and go ahead and box in your answer. Now I want you to go ahead and look at question number 5. This one's just a little bit different than any of the problems that we've done yet today. Which expression does not belong with the other 3? We've got to get them all to kind of look the same. Hope, what is the absolute value of 6? 6, all right? So I'm just going to write that beside it. The next one, Hayden, do I need to do anything with that 6?
No.
Nope, it's just there, so I can just leave it like that. -6. Am I allowed to turn this into a positive if I want? No. Think about -$6. That means I owe somebody $6. I can't just say, never mind, I don't want to owe them. You have to keep it as a -6. What about the next one, Ariana? The absolute value of -6. 6. Now that we've done that work, can you guys see which one doesn't belong? A, B, C, or D? C does not belong because everything else means +6, but C means -6. All right, and unfortunately we have run out of time, so we are not going to worry about number 6. You can just put a little X on the 6. Okay, so if you look up here, don't forget tomorrow we do have our supply quiz. There's a few things I'm going to be looking for. That pink paper is your signed procedures paper. Today I give you a little half sheet of white paper. That's your textbook paper. Your math book has to be covered when you come to class tomorrow with one of those stretchy big covers. And then make sure that you've logged into Big Ideas and into the Google Classroom, okay? Great job today, guys.